So, and to kind of start at where this originated for me, how I became aware of you is that you covered The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News, and you made this really fun video with all these 80s references and Back to the Future references. And the band loved it, and they, as Huey even said, "Wow, I didn't know that I wrote a bluegrass song," but apparently I did. Um, what I'm wondering though is when did you get the impetus to convert that into a bluegrass song? Because I would say that's not an obvious choice.
Right, right. So most of my records, they're almost exclusively original material that I've written or co-written with other people. I think it's important for an artist to have their own voice and to have something new to offer to people. But the last record was all my writings. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a single cover, even one that hadn't really been written, but written outside of the band. Um, and Stephen Mogen, who plays with Sam Bush and is my producer for the records. He also runs Dark Shadow Recording.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he said, do you want to do a cover on this record? We didn't do one on the last one. I said, you know what? That would be awesome. I was like, what are you thinking? He's like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I mean, honestly, like I love 80s rock and it's kind of hip right now too, but I've always loved it. And I think there's been some really great tunes that have been plucked from the ether of just music around and popular. So I was like, yeah, I think I'd like to cover maybe a rock tune or something. And he's like, okay. I was like, well, put together a big list of things and shoot me a demo of stuff. And you know, uh, the father of bluegrass music, Bill Monroe, he said of bluegrass music, I made my music so it could go from my heart to yours so we could both hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's connecting on an emotional level, on a gut level, however you want to look at that, but actually connecting with an audience. And I've always found that when it's my own lyrics, it's something I know. It's something that I can really talk about, really own. And I don't own the rock lifestyle. Like that's not me. I'm a father of two kids. I love my wife and I love making music. I build
Mm-hmm.
guitars too, so um, I'm kind of all in on life, just completely sober. So I don't live the rock style lifestyle, but um, I do love the music. And so I came up with a list of like 10 tunes, and Steven's like, yeah, sure. Those are cool tunes, demo them and and just shoot me a verse and a chorus, kind of what you're thinking for vibe, speed, and
Mm-hmm.
key. Well, so I assembled these songs and sent it to him. He said, well, these are all great. Like you should do a covers record someday. And I was like, okay, well, that'd be cool. And then after I'd sent that, I went, oh my God, I completely forgot. Like one of my favorite tunes of all time. It's perfect. I have to do it. And I told him, I was like, I've got to do Power of Love. He's like, okay, well, send it to me. It's like, I love the song. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'm on board. But it just hit me. It's like, man, there was so much joy from those movies. And I love Huey's music. And, it was always around. My brother Jim Bob and we put the CDs in, and just blast it. We didn't have 8 track.
Yeah.
We were growing up in the 80s, but we kind of hit the 80s with the cultural second wave of what was in movies and what was still popular. And
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did watch MTV, but it wasn't like, it wasn't in our house when we
Mm-hmm.
weren't supposed to be watching it. But I got so much joy out of The Power of Love and out of the Back to the Future movies when I was a kid. Man, it was such a fun song. And when I had the epiphany, it just came. I was listening to a Spotify playlist of my 80s rock that I run to when I do
Mm-hmm.
trail running, and it was nothing like Power of Love that was on, and it just like stopped me in my tracks. Like I have to do this song. And so call it what you want, divine intervention or just a muse in my ear. I had the thought, I have to do Power of Love. And when I demoed it, Stephen was like, "Oh, absolutely, this is the one we're doing." He instantly was like, "This is great." It even sounds, it sounds kind of like something you would do normally in bluegrass. It's got the pentatonic melody of the verse, but then it goes to a major melody in the chorus. So it's a great switcheroo. I think it's a beautifully written song, and of course Huey sang the absolute crap out of it. And so that was inspiring and really got me to dig deep and I wanted to do it right. There's no point in doing a cover if it's going to be like, oh man, they really shouldn't have. if you can't feel it, you can't sell it. There's no point in doing it. And so I really was like, all right, we're gonna do it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it with everything I've got, and really tried to channel the heart of Huey in that, because I can't be him. I mean, he's such an amazing vocalist, but I could definitely do me to the best of my ability and be inspired to up the level.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to record that and have everybody else so on board with it, because they all loved it and knew it growing up too. So it was just a fun experience, and the actual music video we recorded in studio while we were recording.
Oh, okay.
So like there's a lot of that's live footage. There's a lot of that then, like, vocally, when I figured out what I wanted to do, phrasing and all that, when I was in there recording that, we were also recording that. So you're seeing some of that live energy that's going into the track. And I was not doing the Rubik's Cube whilst recording, because it goes click, 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 click,
yeah.
but we thought that wasn't going to add to the track.
Right.
But it was so much fun, and it was in such a spirit of fun that we, number one, decided to record it, but then really wanted to cash in on that just fun, kind of tongue in cheek, but also just lighthearted fun with the 80s vibe of it all. And we really cut the song in costume, just because it was so much fun. But yeah, it was such a joy. So I'm so glad that Stephen agreed with me that we absolutely had to do it. And it was a great feature track. That's why I wanted to release it as the first single, because it had such good energy, and it was recorded for all the right reasons. And it really showed an emotion. It was fun. And I think that connects with people, because when you feel something genuinely and you can put that out there, people are going to do something with it. And it's not always for everybody, but if it evokes a memory or a genuine emotion, that's what you want. So.
Yeah. And although I like cover songs where they kind of are like the original a little bit, it's always fascinating to me when you can cover a tune and completely in not completely change it, but just take it in a whole different direction. But it's still the essence of the song, and and it's a really cool reinterpretation, and it's a nice compliment for the song to say, hey, this can work in multiple versions, multiple formats, which not every tune can do.
Right. And when I first was talking with Stephen about this, I cut the demo before I went back and learned all of the guitar riffs, but I was just worried about singing it and demoing it. And I just did something, and it turned out to be like the way the kickoff went, because I just I had a rhythmic thing, and then I did a lick and then jumped right in to the singing.
Yeah.
But then after that, I sent that demo off to him. I went and learned all the guitar riffs and started to incorporate that. And he's like, actually, this thing that you did on the demo, why don't we try that? Because it seems a little more bluegrass, but also I liked the attitude that it had, and it just did something for me. And I was like, oh, well, okay, all right. But I sat down and learned all the guitar riffs and really loved it, because I was like, man, then it was like I really owned that song of my childhood. And when you can play it on a guitar, you feel kind of like a rock star.
Right.
But no, it was so much fun. And we definitely did the work of learning it note for note, chord for chord, but then there were a couple things that when we got in the studio and we got the bluegrass shrink wrapping on it, and it kind of got that packaging of trying to really make it a bluegrass song. I think we changed two chords. I mean, it was not a big change, but there was a little change in the bridge to make it flow a little easier for bluegrass instrumentation. You get those flatted sixes and flatted threes in there, and it can lay okay, but you got to really kind of think on, how do I make this still sound like bluegrass?
Yeah. No,
and not be like awkward, because nobody wants that.
Right. Yeah.
So
and that is the interesting thing, is when you delve into the rest of this album, Uncommon Sky, what was fascinating for me is like, wow, this really meshes with everything else on the album. And because sometimes it's like, you're going through tracks and it's like, original, and then cover like way over here and then back to original. But this, it's still like, if you didn't know the song ahead of time, it would like still fit in with everything else on the album,
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, we recorded it all together, and so part of that helps. But I think it can be very disjointed when you do a cover, especially if you don't pick the right one for the right album. But whereas it very much, I think honestly, a lot of it is because it was so influential on me as a kid. I love the blues. I love somebody who can gutsy sing something out. Like it went, and it was a perfect fit for the sound that I try to put out in bluegrass. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm glad we didn't make an error there.
Right. And then, you were talking about the different little turns of phrase in the lyrics, and how that kind of caught your ear. And there's a lot of fun turns of phrase on this album as well. And one of my favorites is Misery Go Round, which I thought was really cool. And it's like, how has no one thought of that before?
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And the whole vibe of the song and the story of the song, and playing with that whole idea. And I'm just curious. I'm always curious with those things, like how much of it is, all right, I'm going to sit down and try and work this out, to make this turn of phrase, and how much of it is just, it pops into your head and, oh, wow.
So right before, this was one of the last tunes I wrote right before we went to the studio, and right before we go into the studio, generally I have a big burst of creativity. I have a whole album's worth of songs, or we're not going to go into the studio. Like we don't arrange the time, but there's always a few like last minute shots towards the goal, or a hallelujah pass, just like trying to get everything, every song that can possibly be the best song to put on the record down on paper and shipped to the producer to like, hey, what do you think of this song? So generally the last week is hell for him. he's just like, I'm an octopus. I keep throwing stuff at him. But this was one of, I think like 7 or 8 songs I'd written in the last week. And, I'd had this idea for a little while. I wrote it down. And then every time I have an idea, I'll write it down. And then it's a list of songs, either to write with somebody, a specific songwriter that I love to write with, or just for a rainy day when I'm like, I feel like writing a song. Like what do we got?
Yeah.
And this one actually, it kind of came really quick, and it definitely had some, like, getting it down on paper. I think it took maybe an hour just to kind of shoot ideas out, get it down on paper, and get the rough idea out. There was lots of, I'm going to play it and record it and hear it back, try to hear it objectively as an audience member. And there was lots of things that changed in that process. But, for me, it's, I try to run with it, and I love the word puzzle. It to me, it's what it is. I mean, finding the right word that imparts the right emotion, that has the right amount of syllables, that fits in the little spot that you need it to, or maybe to do an off canter rhythm thing that really sets it off. Like, I love that puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And that I get a kick out of it. I don't drudge through any songwriting process unless I just don't like the person I'm writing with, which I do that mistake once.
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next person if it's a total buzzkill. Like, I don't want it to be a job. I love it,
Yeah.
and I want to either I try to feel the genuine emotions when when the song is what it is. If
Mm-hmm.
it's a happy song, I'm not writing a happy song when I'm having a down day or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm writing a happy song after I just went for a 5 mile run and feeling high and feeling great and loving life. I tend to reserve the sad, miserable, pitiful songs for when I'm out on the road. I think not this last record, but the record before, I was on the road in Ireland for 28 days straight. I hadn't seen my wife, and
Wow.
and I mean, it was just, I was miserable. I was a sorry sot, and and I was like, you know what? Instead of getting depressed about it, I'm just gonna write a song. Like, it's gonna be pitiful. It's gonna be terrible. And it was. It's. I've had lots of people come up. That's so depressing, but I love that song.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm sorry. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
but it's I try to get in a genuine place of feeling whatever that emotion is, and just run with it.
Yeah. But I love that with lyrics because it's like you can just that twist. You can say so much more than just straight saying something. For some,
Right.
and sometimes it's humorous, sometimes but there's deeper meaning. The other great line I love from this album is no one plus me ain't making three. um
Yeah.
um and it reminds me a lot of like Brad Paisley's writing, some of the turns of phrase he has, and here's lyrics
Yeah.
very similar where it's like, oh wow, that it's like that's a great way of phrasing it. And then plus it's more than just the direct definition of what it is that brings so much more to the picture, I think.
Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment. I love Brad Paisley's writing. I think he's a very underrated writer in some ways. He should be one of these cats that just sits there in a box and it comes up with number one hits.
Yeah.
But he's also, he loves performing. So we catch those songs from him. But yeah, he should be writing for a bunch of artists. It's such good writing, and there's such not good writing sometimes
Right. Yeah.
around out there in the ether on the radio. So when you get a really great guy who can really turn a good phrase, yeah, your ear latches onto that, and you're like, oh yeah, that hit me in the feels. What was that all about?
Right.
Um, but I really dig his writing, and I've learned a bunch of his songs over the years, and it was because it was such good writing.
Mm.
So yeah, he absolutely was an influence on me. And it's funny, I'd never really thought about it until you brought it up. But yeah, I'm a Brad Paisley fan. It was the first country record I think I actually bought, were like three of his records. When my wife
Oh.
and I first started dating, and she introduced me to Brad Paisley, because I was all about bluegrass when I was a kid, man.
Mm-hmm.
I was about bluegrass, and I was about old blues, like from the 20s, Django Reinhardt, and then
Oh,
80s
okay.
rock.
Yeah.
Like, it was a weird amalgamation of stuff I was listening to. But you get your influences, whatever speaks to you. And sometimes, I think a lot of times, if you're open to growing, it changes as you get older.
Yeah.
Um,
That's funny
but
because he was our my intro to country as well, and because I was mainly into rock and stuff like that. And then when my wife was pregnant and she was just had the TV on a lot when she was home and stuff, and ended up watching CMT, and then she's like, "You got to check this guy out. His lyrics are hilarious, and he's fabulous." And then I was like, "Holy
Yeah.
cow! If you listen to that guitar playing, you know," and then that
Yeah, I know.
that led me down. And it's you know, and staying on the idea of influences, and also that song, "Too Lonely, Way Too Long." Um, you've you play with some heavyweights on this album.
Yeah.
Um,
I
you know,
was very, very blessed with some wonderful guests of the legendary status. I mean, I had some great guests on the last record too. With Sam Bush and the cats in the Del McCoury band. But
yeah.
to get Del actually on this record, who is a living legend, and he actually is my favorite vocalist of all time.
Hmm.
Del, he's not for everybody. A lot of people can either take him or leave him. But if you take him, you love him.
Yeah.
Because he's such a genuine person, and he's always on when he's on stage. Like he's just always in it to win it, always really selling the lyric, and he just absolutely is crushing it. At I think he's 85 this year.
Oh wow.
Speaking of, I don't know if you can hear that. I've got a youngin who's singing in the living room.
Oh okay.
Getting a little excited. But um,
Okay.
you know,
Wow.
Del
85.
McCoury, yeah, he's 85, and he's still so young at heart. He still loves bluegrass. He gets under the bus to repair the brakes in his bus at 85. He's still living life real big, and that's inspiring when I can look up to people who aren't bitter and so mad at the system or whatever that's done. I mean, Dell's just Dell, and he's
Yeah.
happy to have a conversation with whoever he's visiting with or sing a song for whoever he's got in front of him. And
And then you also had Jerry Douglas from Union Station playing
yes,
dobro
yes, playing
on this
dobro.
one. And I'm wondering, what did you learn from that experience?
Um, that honestly, again, like with Dell, Jerry is he's excited to do the music that he's chosen to do, or he doesn't choose to do it. Um, he came with loads of ideas for arrangements, or like what he thought lyric wise was the pinnacle moment, and we should really draw that out with an arrangement idea. And
Hmm.
he came loaded for bear. I mean, he really had just so many great ideas, and he was really excited to be there. And I was completely blown away. I thought for sure, I was like, Jerry's going to come in, maybe even after we're done, and just go and
Yeah.
tear it up and be awesome, and it'll make it amazing, and it'll be great. And
Yeah.
it was so much more. He came in, he was early, he hung out, he had tons of stories to share from touring days
Oh
with
wow.
J.D. Crowe in the New South, Ricky Skaggs, Tony Rice. Um, and it was such a great hang, and he was so into the music, and,
Hmm.
and he was very warm and full of compliments, and it was just a joy. um so I can't speak highly enough of Dell and Jerry. Those guys were amazing to work with, and really taken home just that, the affirmation of sometimes as a songwriter you can get so involved in the songwriting spot that then if you have to go perform it, you have this preconceived notion in your head that you then have to kind of let go of a little bit as the
Hmm.
artist, and submit to the song, whatever it
Yeah.
is. um and Jerry was really instrumental in saying, dude, like the melodies are great, don't try to overcomplicate it, like don't put too many curls in, that's a beautiful melody. And I was
Hmm.
just like, on one of the slow songs that
Okay.
he also
Okay.
was on, and I was like, dude, that's cool. Jerry Douglas said I wrote a
Yeah.
beautiful melody. He's heard a few of those in his day. Um, but it was so cool, and just like letting the music be what it is, and not trying to be impressive, but convey emotion and real stuff. And it was so cool.
That's
Uh,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So digging deep and on an emotional level, trying to connect, and um, what I loved about guitar riffs from the 80s rocks scene was that it was accessible. Like you can get up there and learn those riffs. They're not simple really, but they're not over processed and overworked where you lose the feeling that those give you. you
Yeah.
know
Right.
the intro to Power of Love with
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's exactly what needed to be there. And then when it comes in on the actual pick, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like, yes.
Right. Right.
But it's sometimes you need a simple introduction into a song to set your mind and heart on, okay, here's what it's going to be. And then all of a sudden it takes off and you just go, whoa, that hit me out of nowhere. I remember, and it just I love those epiphany moments where you can engage an audience and show them something maybe that they weren't quite expecting, but they really love.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, and I get it. It's like the more I talk to musicians, the more I find a lot of them have very diverse interests. Um, which would surprise, I think, a lot of their fans.
yeah.
And it's like, because I've interviewed a number of country artists as well as rock and stuff, and it's always like, hands down, like every country artist like loves AC/DC, and just like, those opening riffs, where it's like that,
Yes.
just it's not, over a million notes a second kind of thing, but it just grabs you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, there's just such great guitar work there. You know, I think bluegrassers might be offended if they learned my real like hit list of guitar players that I've been influenced by over the years. They might be like, "Oh, that's no part of bluegrass. What are you doing listening to that?" But it's made me who I am, and I think that's important to carry that spirit forward of ingenuity of really great guitar players, because there's so much material out there that is just amazing, and it needs to be paid homage to.
Yeah.
Um,
and
but
and
yeah,
then along the lines of guitars, you actually make guitars for yourself and for other people. And
yeah,
there was a line on your website where it talked about when you were learning about making guitars and stuff, and it said that you approached it from a different perspective. You weren't approaching it from the perspective of a woodworker. You were approaching from the perspective of a guitar player, which I thought was cool and interesting. But what I'm wondering is, all right, how has learning how to create these instruments influenced you as a player?
that's a great point, and it has. Knowing what's under the hood, so to speak, where to push those instruments, and um, that I mean, really, that is a great question, because you're focused so much on, as a guitar player, you're focused on what can I get out of this thing? What does it do? What is its voice like? But when you're building it, like, your whole aim point is, where's its voice? I mean, it's you're you know um the thing that came to mind, I don't know, I don't want to sound pretentious, but it just came to mind. Okay, so I'm going to say it anyways. Michelangelo's David, he said he was pulling him out of the marble, but
Yes.
he
No.
knew he was in there. Like,
Right.
it's just like, and I really don't mean for that to sound pretentious, but it it was, when I heard that, it was transformative to me as an artist. Like, just somebody can actually look at a hunk of marble and see like a completed statue in there, or see
Yeah.
a character at all. Like, I just would look at it and I was like, that's a big old hunk of marble, man. What you gonna
Right.
do with that?
Right.
It's a mighty big staircase right there.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, but
No.
but
Yeah. No.
knowing that, people can look into something and see something. it's kind of like that sonically when you're building guitars. You handling the wood, you pick like I pick the wood at the actual sawmill.
Mm.
So I drive to a place in Fulton, Missouri, which is about 4 hours away from my shop, to go and hand pick tops. Just because, like, I mean, they have literally probably 20,000 tops in there.
Wow.
And I'll go in there and spend 3 hours and come away with, whatever, 20 tops. Just, but I'm sitting there and I'm banging them, I'm feeling them, I'm flexing them, and um, it's just I'm looking for a little certain something that it's hard to describe, but
Hmm.
when I hear it, I'm like, that is the top that I want.
Yeah.
Um, in Stradivarius, they sit up on the hill and listen to the sawmillers roll the log down the hill,
Oh,
and
wow.
they would have one log that they said would sing on its way down.
Oh, wow.
That was the tree that they would buy. They would take that tree, that whole tree, they would buy it, and then they would process it, and then they would treat it the way that they did. But that was kind of the family thing, is they went to where the wood was, and
Yeah.
they listened to it.
Okay.
So it's kind of kooky, but it's really the way it feels in this when I'm making those guitars. It really feels like I'm listening to that wood and I'm hearing its voice before it's actually strung up. And it's just like, okay, well, it's not quite there yet. It needs a little more sanding. It needs to be a little thinner, or I need to take a little more bracewood off here. And it's just kind of sculpting that voice out of that box. And
Hmm.
um, I would say that it's made me come at guitar from an unbiased standpoint of tone. Um, I kind of like more of a piano tone out of a guitar now.
Oh.
It's very full. It's very rich. It's got a long sustain. Uh, I think certain people would not like my guitars because I like a guitar to really ring out, like
Hmm.
almost to an annoying level, where it just takes forever to decay off.
Yeah.
And because I love to sing a slow song with something that's just it's filling the palette below me,
Hmm.
and I can really hear pitch well. Um, it's not a dry sound. It's very saturated. Uh, it's just everything I want in a
Right.
guitar.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
It it
so
it it breathes.
yeah,
And
yeah, and I think that's part of it too. Is I write songs on this guitar. It's influenced definitely the way I play guitar. I love to play a lot of open chord keys now,
hmm.
whereas in bluegrass it's very traditional to play capo on and play the same stuff over and over again. And I don't. It's not really people. Early days would call it a cheater. It's not really. It's just sonically what is accepted in bluegrass, and it's what the norm is. But there have been several times now, and I think even on this record, I recorded a song in open B,
Hmm.
um, Hellfire Club.
Hmm.
That's an open B song, and it's such kind of a spooky, dark tone to it, and it just rings forever because there's a lot of open droning notes. Um, and so I think that's really influenced my guitar playing too. Is I want to hear that bottom end. I want to hear it growling on the low E
Yeah.
in open B. I want to hear something that's more than the traditional bluegrass guitar because I know it's there. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it has stretched my guitar playing in a different, unique direction. There's not a lot of guitar players. In fact, really, I only know of Brian Sutton that plays an open B at any
Hmm.
given time, and he doesn't do it all the time, but he does it for certain songs that it lays well,
Yeah.
or adds something to it. Um,
Right.
and I'm not
Yeah.
saying I'm
And
some sort of hotshot guitar player. I'm just saying like I want more of the sonic palette. And
right. And also I mean, I get irked when people try and pigeonhole things,
yeah,
putting, and I know for categorization purposes and all this kind of, well, this is bluegrass and this is, country and this is rock and stuff. But to me, it's like, well, you can't, there's so much that blurs the lines. And, like last year, I did interviews with Graham and Barrett of Steep Canyon Rangers.
oh
And,
yeah,
you know, they've had a lot of debates with people about, okay, where they're taking things. Is it still considered bluegrass and all that kind of stuff? And
Right.
it's, but it's like, well, does it really need to be classified? Or, it's just, if it's good, it's good, and
Right.
if it takes you in a new direction, it takes you in a new direction, so.
Yeah. And the crazy thing that a lot of people don't remember is bluegrass was such a hard left turn from everything that was traditional music at that point.
Oh.
Uh, when they hit the stage in 46 and they had they had the quintessential band of Flatt and Scruggs and Cedric Rainwater and Josh Graves. Like it just excuse me, Josh Graves was with Flatt and Scruggs, but Chubby Wise was with them too. But it just completely changed the game. It became bluegrass at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because Earl was playing that three finger style that was very unheard. It was a little bit around in North Carolina, but nobody was doing it like Earl did it.
Mm-hmm.
And so hearing that banjo that was then a soloing instrument, whereas it was strictly pretty much a rhythm instrument, because you couldn't hardly hear it. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was frailed with bare fingers, and you were picking out melody, but it's a bare thumb on the side of the thumb. Like nothing's cutting through a band that way.
Yeah.
And amplification was not super great. You were singing into one microphone, maybe two if you were lucky. So like nobody knew except for rhythm really what a banjo sounded like until Earl stepped up to that mic and people just went, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and Bill was writing original material. He was writing original material with bandmates as well. They were doing songs that had never been done before, or they were taking songs that people like Jimmy Rogers had huge hits with and turning them into bluegrass songs, and they became bluegrass canon because Bill reached outside the genre and brought it in.
Got it.
There's so much that came from blues because one of Bill Monroe's earliest influences was Arnold Schultz, was a black railroad worker who played the blues.
Mm.
And played with his Uncle Pen, who played Scotch Irish fiddle style. So it was just like
Mm.
a huge joining together in a wonderful way of two very different musical styles and backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
The black Delta blues versus the Scotch Irish white fiddling. It did something to Bill's ear, and it led him to form bluegrass. And so when people say it's not bluegrass, well, the very spirit of bluegrass is inventive ingenuity and
Mm-hmm.
stretching boundaries of what you think is the norm.
Yeah.
So I think the heart of bluegrass is rebellious at heart, just to say the least. I think it, like any music, can get stagnant, and I think new sonic properties give it a shot in the arm. I think there's definitely certain forms of music out there right now that are getting over homogenized, and everybody's just writing, like the same three people are writing thousands of songs, and you
Yes.
can tell.
Yeah.
But that's you want things to become fresh and new, and you want it to be done in a respectful way that knows its roots. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
where things get lost when you don't know your roots and where things have come from. You can get lost in the mire for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
All right,
Um,
cool. Well, I've already kept you for longer than I said I would.
no, you're fine.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a Faris, so we've grown up with the gift of gab. We
Right.
we don't mind talking, and unfortunately that can mean to some long
All
conversations,
right.
but always enjoy visiting with folks, and this has been a wonderful time to visit with you, Cris. So thank you so much for having me. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
my pleasure. And is there anything we didn't hit on that you wanted to talk about, or anything even that no one ever asks me about such and such, but I'd like to talk about this.
Yeah, we kind of hit a wide swath. I, I really appreciate you being so educated on what I'm up with, what I'm up to, and that was an awesome surprise. I
Okay.
appreciate it. But you know, the album releases on the 9th. I have some release album shows coming up, but I play a lot of bluegrass festivals, and so touring is a lot of fun, but I still got a lot of guitars to build, so I'm trying to just meet that delicate balance. But um, I mean, you surprisingly hit all of the high notes that I wanted to possibly talk about, and I'm grateful for you and for this
Oh
time.
yeah.
So
No, my pleasure. I
um,
love delving into this stuff.
maybe yeah, maybe the website rickfaris.com
Hmm.
would be handy. And Faris is spelt like Paris, France, but with an F.